So as soon as you make a statement that God exists or God does not exist, somewhere we have already reduced God to an object,
Right.
which depends upon my ability to understand. So even if you're saying God exists, you have actually made a God into an object. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Namaste. My name is Bidhan. 2012 is when I chanced upon Upanishads, and it had a profound impact on my life. Since then, I have dreamt to bring the key aspects of Upanishads in a manner which is simple, relatable, and implementable in our daily lives. So here we are with a set of videos to make spirituality simple. By asking, does God exist? Are we reducing God to an object that needs a proof? Or there is something more fundamental, changeless, self-evident, that does not require any proof? And what if you discover that today? If you discover something like that today, will it completely change the way you look at God and yourself? Stay with us as today's conversation may completely change the way you look at God, yourself, and awareness. And a personal request, if you find this conversation meaningful, please consider subscribing and sharing. So Preeti, when you ask this question, does God exist? Give me a proof. Are you seeing there is an hidden assumption? The assumption that the God is dependent on knowing.
I didn't understand anything of what you just said, except that I was asking for proof of God's existence.
Okay, let's do a thought experiment, right? Let me take a book. Look at the book that I got. It's God not. All right. So you can see this book.
Yes.
Now, does this book depend upon your ability to perceive, to see, feel, and touch?
I don't know. To me, this is a book.
To you, this is the book.
Yeah.
But this existence of this book depends upon you knowing the book. Suppose if your faculty wasn't working fine, if you are not able to see, if you're not able to feel, the book may exist, but does it exist for you?
Okay. It depends on my sense organs, right? I'm able to see it, I'm able to touch it and feel it. Correct.
So you get this point.
Okay.
So if this book comes in your awareness, if this book can be perceived by your sense organs, then this book exists for you.
Got it.
Right? Now let us look at the hierarchy where the book stands. So the book is the object to be known.
Okay.
It is known by your sense organs. The data is perceived by the mind. And there is a center in the mind, which is called the ahamkara or the ego, which says, I know this book.
Okay.
You understand this very clearly. Right? The book is dependent upon sense organs. The sense organs is dependent upon the mind. And there is an agent in the mind called the ego which says,
this is a book.
this is a book.
I know that this is a book.
I know that this is a book.
Okay.
This makes sense?
Okay.
So the book is subservient to the sense organs.
Right.
The sense organs is subservient to the mind. And there's an ego which finally takes the decision.
Right.
So the existence of this book for you depends upon
my own perception of me knowing that this is a book. Correct.
So the book is the lowest in the hierarchy, right?
Yes.
Right? So now let's do another thing.
Okay.
Replace this book with God.
Okay. Instead of thinking of a book,
Think of a God.
Okay.
Right?
Fine.
Now when you say, does God exist? Or God exists, or God does not exist, you are finally using your sense organs, your understanding, your beliefs, your perceptions, your mind to certify whether the God exists or it doesn't exist. Are you seeing this? So you have actually brought God in the lowest level of hierarchy just as you have got the book. Think about it. Ultimately, the existence of God now depends upon your ability to understand, right? Your ability to perceive, your ability to believe or not believe. And using all those data that you have or abilities that you have, there's an ego inside you, or there is an ego in the mind sitting and saying, hey, God exists, or worse, the God doesn't exist. So it is the ego who is actually giving a certificate whether the God exists or whether the God doesn't exist. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Oh my God. Oh my
Oh my
God.
God.
I'm saying, oh my God. But just like you're saying, for me to perceive this book or perceive the object in front of me as a book, it depends on my own perception, my sense organs.
Yes.
And eventually, there is a center in my mind that says, I know that this is a book.
Right.
So now that we have replaced the book analogy for God,
Yes.
you're saying that, and this is something that has struck a nerve because it means that me personally, even if I'm talking about myself, that I am someone who is giving that certificate saying that God exists or even God doesn't exist. Because who am I? Like, somewhere I'm putting myself higher or bigger than God.
Absolutely. That's the point I'm trying to make. So, as soon as you make a statement that God exists or God does not exist, somewhere we have already reduced God to an object,
Right.
which depends upon my ability to understand. So, even if you're saying God exists, you have actually made a God into an object. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And who is giving the proof? The ego.
Ahankara, the
So, the
ego.
ahankara has become bigger than the God now.
Even if you're sitting and debating that God does exist, you're still somewhere certifying that you are higher than that power and that you can
And who is
perceive.
certifying?
Exactly.
The
I.
ego, the I. So the God has now become subservient to your sense organs, to your understanding.
And we are put in the lowest
And it's
rung of the pyramid.
So this very question itself makes God an object,
Yeah.
which is dependent upon knowing. Or and even I'm not forget about saying that God does not exist. Even when you say God exists,
It's you are certifying.
you're certifying it.
And who are you to certify?
And who are you to certify this? So somewhere, and if I go to the next level, Preeti, now if God is dependent on knowing,
Okay.
which means God is not independent entity,
Okay.
and something which is not independent in Upanishads, that is called
Mithya.
mythya. So by debating whether God exists or God does not exist, we have anyway converted God into mythya, because now God is dependent upon knowing.
Us knowing.
Us knowing.
Correct.
Is God mythya?
No.
No.
I don't think we are anyone to reduce God to Mithya.
Do you see how debates going all over the internet, saying whether God exists, God doesn't exist, and all kind of things have been spoken about, but fundamentally we are going wrong by even putting God as a center of debate, because we are not able to see that we are actually reducing God
To an
to an
object.
object which is subservient to our knowing. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And therefore, there seems to be some sort of a logical mistake we are doing by going in this direction. And for all you know, we have to now start asking if God is dependent mithya or God is independent satyam. So we need to move from mithya to truth.
Absolute truth.
Absolute truth. When I say satyam, I don't mean saying true.
Right.
Not that sort of a satyam we are talking about. Satyam simply means that which is
The absolute
the
truth.
absolute truth. The absolute, forget about truth, that absolute.
So you just mentioned And you said forget truth, let's just call it absolute. So what is this absolute? What is satyam?
That which is changeless and fundamental.
I mean, you just put changeless, fundamental, and full stop, and you're looking at me like I'm supposed to understand. What do you mean? Can you explain? Can you elaborate so that even I can understand it?
Okay. Forget about that. Is there something that you see is changeless and independent?
No, I think everything changes. Everything around me changes, and everything is very dependent on me knowing it. So I think
That's what
yeah, we just had this.
we had this discussion. That's
Yeah.
good. At least we are there. Okay. You see this book.
Okay.
You also can. You also are aware of the question: Does God exist?
Yes.
You are also aware of the confusion that comes
Whether
along with
there
it.
is a God or not. Yes, very
Right.
aware.
You're also aware of what we discussed few seconds before, that how we are reducing God to an object.
Yes.
And you're also aware of the discomfort that you faced.
Yeah.
So Preeti, what is changing here?
Everything from my thoughts, my emotions, the beliefs that I have. I think even the whole idea with the conversation we just had, it has struck some kind of chord inside. So the belief also is slowly changing, right?
Changing, right? So now, when all this is changing, you're aware of this.
I'm aware that it is changing, correct.
All of this, you're aware that it is changing, right?
Okay.
Now, let me ask you a question. Do you believe you're aware, or you know that you're aware?
I know. I know that I'm aware.
You know that you're aware,
Yeah.
right? So, first of all, the awareness in which all these changes are happening, that awareness itself is self-evident. Nobody needs to tell you that you are aware. That's not a belief. Your awareness is self-evident to you. You know that you are aware, and therefore you are aware of so many changes that you have seen in just maybe last 5 minutes.
Right.
So can we lock that up, that the awareness that you have is self-revealing?
Okay. A bit abstract, but yeah.
Self-revealing, right?
Okay.
Now this awareness that you have, which is self-revealing, which reveals itself, it is independent and changeless too.
Okay. Independent. Why independent?
So all the feelings and emotions that you and the thoughts that you went through, the thoughts about whether God exists or not, the thought about the very question reduces God to an object, the feeling that you felt a little uncomfortable, all that you experience right now, does those experiences depend upon awareness, or awareness depends upon those experiences?
You again lost me, Bidan. I don't know what is the difference.
Okay. Suppose you have a belief that a person loves you, or you have a belief that the God will protect you.
Okay.
Possible? Now, suppose this belief comes true. The person truly loves you and goes all out for you, or when you are in a problem, something happens that proves that God has helped you. How will you feel?
I would feel good.
You feel
and
good?
I would feel protected. Yes.
Wonderful. Now, suppose you get to see that the person has not stood for you, and when you are in greatest difficulty, the God is not coming and protecting you the way you would have thought about it. How would you feel?
Not so good. I mean, I would feel bad and I would probably feel deserted in some way.
All right. Now, you see few things here. There is a belief.
Right?
There's a belief that the person loves me, or the
Loves
God is
me.
going to protect
Correct.
me. After the belief, there's an experience. The
The
experience
experience of being loved,
being
or
loved, being protected, or
Correct.
not being loved and not being protected.
Correct.
Also, there is an emotion after that,
Feeling good or feeling
feeling
bad.
good or
Correct.
feeling bad. So there is a belief, there is something that happens, there's an experience, and there is a
Emotion.
emotion. Now, these three things which happened, this happened in your awareness. This will happen in your awareness, right?
Okay.
So it depends upon your awareness to be known. The belief is known by you. So the belief depends upon awareness to be known. The experience happens in your awareness. So experience depends upon awareness. The emotion also appears in your awareness. So the emotion also depends upon awareness. Do you see this?
Okay.
So everything is dependent in awareness. Nothing can exist outside of your awareness. Because if it is outside of your awareness, it is not known
Technically, it's not existent for me.
for you. Do you see this?
Okay.
So therefore, all these are dependent on awareness to be known.
So now I get your question.
Now you get my question?
Yes.
Now let's go a step ahead. Suppose you get into a deep meditation where there's absence of all thoughts, all sensations, right? All emotions. Nothing is there. But you're still aware. You're aware of the absence. Which means that awareness can exist independent of your thoughts, of your emotions, of sensations.
Are you saying during deep meditation, you are aware that you're having no thoughts?
Yes.
So the awareness is existent. Okay.
So even in those phases, so if you see clearly that awareness is independent,
Okay. Now I get it.
while all your thoughts, emotions, beliefs is dependent on awareness to be known.
Right.
So that talks about 2 points. The first we spoke about that awareness is self-evident. Nobody needs to tell you that you are aware. And the second we see right now that awareness is
Independent.
independent of the contents of awareness.
Right. So
Right.
to answer the question that you have put to me, it is that our thoughts and our emotions and our experiences
Yes.
are dependent on the awareness and not
Yes.
the other way around.
Not the awareness is not dependent on them. So if you see, awareness is also prior and changeless. Apart from being independent, awareness is prior and changeless.
You've just added 2 new words. Why are you saying prior?
Okay. So this word prior can actually create some confusion. It can feel that awareness comes first and the contents in the awareness comes later after 2 seconds or 5 seconds. No, I don't mean by that. Take an example of a clay and a pot.
Okay.
A clay is prior to a pot.
Right.
The clay needs to exist for pot to be there
Right. To get manifested as a pot. Correct.
right? Similarly, there needs to be an awareness for any experience to happen. That's what I said. Awareness is prior,
Okay.
right? So the experience in itself cannot exist without awareness. So that's what I meant by awareness is prior to all the experiences that you have. You need to be aware to know that you are having experiences or you're not having experiences.
Right.
So awareness is always going to be prior to your thoughts and experiences and a whole lot of things that happens. And it's also changeless.
Right. So just like you were saying, the clay example. So if I maybe take wood, for example. So you're saying wood has to exist before a chair can exist.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's why you're saying awareness is prior.
Is prior to any
Awareness
experience.
has to exist before any knowing experiences exist.
Yeah, there has to be awareness, because when we say awareness has to exist, then it gets a little confusing with the word existence. So there is awareness.
Awareness. Okay.
And then therefore awareness is prior. So only then knowing is possible.
Right.
Right.
I mean, beautiful. But you also mentioned changeless.
Right.
So I'm sure I'm going to ask you and then you're going to elaborate with another experiment. So tell me how are you saying that awareness is changeless?
Why do you think it is not changeless?
Because see, I've heard of people having heightened states of awareness, or let's even say, for example, if someone takes like some drugs or marijuana. So I've heard that their awareness changes, right? So then how can we say that awareness is changeless?
2 points. First of all, we are confusing the words, but fundamentally, for a change to be known, you need to be out of the change.
You need to be an observer, you mean. Okay.
You need to be out of the change, right? In the sense, only when you're standing on the platform can you see the train moving. You have to be changeless, or you have to be not moving along with the train to know that the train is moving, correct?
Correct.
Right? So you need to be out of the change to see the changes. Now, if you're seeing that your mind is changing, your thoughts are changing, your feelings are changing, the behavior is changing, the world is changing, that means and all this is changing within awareness, which means awareness has to be changeless with respect to everything which is changing around you. Otherwise, how will you even notice the change? If the awareness also changes along with the change, then if the two trains are moving at the same speed, you will never figure
feel
out.
like there's no change.
There's no change. There's no movement happening. The movement will happen. The feeling of movement comes only when there is something which is changeless with respect to the change. That's the first point we need to understand, right? And the second, when we say under the influence of a medication or anything, these states of awareness have changed, we confuse that. It's not that levels of awareness have changed. The state of mind has changed.
Okay. So you're saying we are interchanging the words mind and awareness.
Awareness, the perception has changed. The way you are taking the data, the way the mind is constructing the data under the influence of a medication or drugs, we reconstruct the entire experiences very differently, isn't it? So it doesn't mean the awareness has changed. It's just so the contents in the mind has changed. And the awareness is aware, or it's known in the awareness, right? Why go so far? Right now you're in a waking state.
Okay.
Right? Now you go into a dream state.
Right.
So your mind has changed.
Okay.
So do you say that awareness has changed?
I don't know.
You don't say the awareness has changed, right? Because right now your mind is basically making sense of the reality with the help of sense organs.
Right.
So data is taken from the sense organs, is reconstructed in the mind, and that's how the entire world appears to you in the waking state. Now, during the dream state, the sense organs aren't functioning, and the mind is reconstructing the entire world basis its projections, basis the memories, right? So mind has not changed, but awareness hasn't changed, because you are now able to differentiate between the waking world and the dream world in the waking world. So awareness is there. And what happens in the deep sleep? In the deep sleep, there is no world, there is no mind. The mind gets resolved. And how do you know the mind gets resolved? Because when you get up, you say, I slept well. Right? If you didn't say I slept well, you could have simply said, if there was awareness was absent, so to say, in a deep sleep, then when you would have got up, you would have said, hey, I was awake, I dreamt, and I was awake again. You will never say that I went through a deep sleep. But there is always a recognition of the fact that there was a point where there was absence of time, absence of space, even the absence of mean. There is certain amount of recognition there. And why is that recognition? Because awareness doesn't change. It's changeless. The contents of mind or the contents of awareness keeps on changing.
Right.
But the awareness is changeless. So if you see, what we have seen is that awareness is self-revealing. You don't need to believe. You know that you are aware, right? You see that awareness
is independent.
Independent. It does not depend upon any thoughts, imaginations, and belief. They depend on awareness. Now you see that awareness is prior to all experiences, more fundamental to everything that is happening, and awareness is changeless.
Right.
So something which is far more fundamental, independent, and changeless. Isn't that satyam? Isn't that the truth?
Wow. Okay, so I don't even know if this is the right question to ask at this point of time, but because we have established that awareness is in fact self-revealing, prior, it is independent, it is changeless. I think you know what I'm going to ask.
Does
God. That mean that awareness is God?
I'm not making that statement right now, Preeti. I'm just trying to say that awareness is truth. And if God has to depend upon awareness for the God to be known, then somewhere awareness is more fundamental than God. If the God is a separate entity somewhere else doing its job, and it is dependent on awareness to be known, then God is subservient to awareness, dependent on awareness, dependent on ego. Then then awareness is more fundamental than God.
And we know that that's not the case.
And that cannot be the case. What does it say to you? That there is something more to this. Right?
And I think the more we talk, the more it's giving me things to think about. And that's why I'm so silent. I think I'm processing so much. But I think whenever I bring up the topic of God, I think you're not in a big hurry to give me answers or explain.
No, that's true. I'm not in any hurry because, see, this is a very nuanced, very subtle topic, right? And for a very long time, we have created an imagery about God, which is not helping anyone. We kind of create a lot of superstitions around it, and we create wrong expectations around it. There are wars in name of God.
Yeah.
So something has gone terribly wrong in the way we have understood God. And therefore, I'm not trying to hurry it up at any cost. And if people say that if you need to find God, go within, search God inside, they mean something, right? And that's what I'm trying to say, that if there is truth in that statement that God is within, if you want to search God, go within, it simply is pointing to something more fundamental, which is, at least today, there's one fundamental entity that we have seen, which is awareness.
Right.
And I know for sure that when we go deeper, discovering awareness, the more and more and more we are getting into the state of revealing awareness. Even I find it difficult to sort of use the words, but once you basically be in the state of complete awareness, the God will reveal itself. It's not something which is a mystical experience. It is to be known. Right? It happens.
So, just the fact that from today's conversation, I think what has been playing in my head over and over is that we, or me, let's not generalize, like I have been giving a certificate even when I do ask the question, does God exist? I don't know if I shouldn't ask now out of fear.
No, it's not fear.
But just by asking the question, does God exist? Or even by making statements that God exists or God doesn't exist, somewhere we have projected ourselves on a higher plane or a higher hierarchy than God, because we are somewhere certifying whether God exists or not. And that itself has really struck a chord with me. And I love this explanation of awareness and sort of understanding that what has remained changeless. Like, you are aware, you know, you have the belief, you are aware of your belief, you're aware of your changing emotions. And so that awareness is what is, according to today's conversation, all the attributes that you have beautifully illustrated about being changeless, about being independent, self-revealing, prior. And I think it's so beautiful to understand that satyam, that absolute truth of awareness. But still, it comes back to that question of, does God exist, right?
Yeah. So no, we will slowly unravel it, and I'm glad that you have that clarity. And to my audience, we do conduct a lot of live sessions on Upanishads, exactly in the similar fashion, where we do not try and bring out mysticism. We just use our logic, understanding, and the way it has been told, the kind of inquiry which has been told in Upanishads. And if you would want to be part of these workshops to see how you can use the ancient wisdom to help you in the present context and make the life better, please go ahead and fill your name and number, which is there in the description below. Yes, Preeti, I think you've kind of summed it quite well. And what we have seen so far, that if we somewhere create an image of a God which is outside of us, a supernatural entity, then we cannot by any means give any explanation to prove why evil exists. And all the explanations we give, and we have seen it in our previous videos, actually doesn't hold enough water. I mean, it can easily be refuted, right? And if we sort of believe that God exists because someone else has seen it, is their experience.
Yeah.
And then you can always say then that God was dependent upon their awareness. So ultimately, we have to move towards something which is much more fundamental, something which is truth. And today, what we have realized that awareness is far more fundamental than anything which is happening within awareness. Maybe the answer is hidden there, and we will slowly move around it. And to your question that does God exist, let's take it in the next episode, because there we will try and understand what is existence and how the question itself may be flawed. And in case if you have enjoyed the conversation, it's been of value to you, I will request to kindly subscribe and share. And please don't forget to comment. Go ahead and put what comes in your mind. I read each and every comment very, very carefully. Let there be grace in our seeking. Namaste.